It's Thursday, 11 o'clock, 2025. It's time for this week's Watch Drop. Today we've got a mix of neo-vintage and actually modern dress watches too. A mix of Patek, Vacheron, Lange, as well as a lot of other interesting stuff on the table. But I'm going to deep dive into about 6 or 7 pieces that I find particularly interesting. To kick things off, I'm going to start with Lange. Lange have made a real mix of watches over the years. And today we've got some that I guess are a little bit more eccentric than your standard Lange 1 choices and your 1815s. These have a little twist on them. First watch I'm going to go to is this Lange 1815 Homage to Walter Lange. The reference 297026. And it's one of those watches that on the face of it looks like a very simple watch, but I assure you it's a very complicated watch. And it just takes a moment to turn it over to understand that. The complication that we have here is a deadbeat seconds start-stop. That's not a stopwatch. It's not necessarily used for timing anything more than 60 seconds long, but it is useful if you're taking pulses as a doctor or you just like showing off a nice complication like this. But I love the fact that it's super simple on the front. It's a limited edition of 145 pieces, and the architecture of the movement behind is something that really is only paralleled by a datograph or an 1815 chronograph. It's really, really special. The degree of finishing is a level up from those that you see in a normal 1815 or 1815 up down. And I mean, I don't really know what's going on at the back. If I'm totally honest with you. But it's a very, very complicated architecture and one that you'll enjoy showing off over dinner, I'm sure. Now, sticking with Lange, I'm going to move on to this Lange 1, but with a Moonphase. It's a 192, so a modern reference with an updated architecture, 192032. Now, this watch is special because it has the Moonphase indication on it. And when you pair that with a rose gold case, you have that contrast that just makes the blue of the Moonphase pop. It really balances the design of the dial, and it makes it feel that much more traditional than you'll see on the Lange 1 Stealth that we'll come on to next. It's a sort of eggshell off-white, off-silver dial with loomed hands. And ordinarily in a dress watch, I don't like that. But when you pair it with a Moonphase, I love the idea that in the sort of later hours of the day, you've still got great legibility in the twinkle of the stars on the Moonphase. It's a really, really nice execution and one that I'd love in my collection, frankly. Moving on to the last Lange on the table, this is an early execution of a Lange 1 in platinum. It's called the Stealth, and I love that. It's called that because it's got that sort of monotone to it, that sort of stealthy grey on grey on grey. And what you notice about it immediately when you pick it up is how much heavier it is to the rose gold Lange 1 that we've got on the table. I'm used to picking up platinum dress watches and not really feeling the difference, particularly between white gold and platinum. But in a Lange 1, I don't know what it is about the case design, but you really notice the difference in weight. And that just makes it feel ever so much special. It's really tremendous. And obviously, being an early execution of a Lange 1, you have that sort of pre-Richemont DNA in it, which a lot of collectors really like. Interestingly, this watch has now reached the lower 20s in pounds in value. And given that these were soaring up in the high 30s, early 40s for a moment, these represent really good value at the moment in time. And I think if you're looking to collect Lange, now is actually a really good time to start spending. I'm certainly looking at these and twitching at the thought of adding another Lange to my collection. So one vintage watch that I want to call out today, and it's very much vintage, this is 1953, is the reference 2496. It's a Calatrava Clous de Paris, and it's a tank-shaped watch, so very much inspired by Cartier Tank Normale, such as the one that I'm wearing today, but it has the Patek iconic Clous de Paris finish all around the bezel, all around the side of the case, and it turns something that you would ordinarily associate rose gold tank-shaped design with Cartier, but with a Clous de Paris, it's unmistakably Patek. And I love that. If you're interested in that sort of Cartier design language, but you want something that's ever so slightly different, it's a great watch to pick up. And you really wouldn't know that this is 70 plus years old. The condition is excellent, and the dial has a sort of waffle finish to it that really, I don't know, I guess complements the finish around the bezel, and it's just a lovely watch to look at and a pleasure to wear. Moving on to another rectangular shaped Patek here. This is the reference 5124G. It's a very deco inspired watch and larger in case size than the 2496 we've just looked at. But what I really like about it, the stepped case makes it feel very deco, even though it's quite a modern watch. But the salmon dial with the black reggae numerals and black Dauphine hands just really make it look such a classic design. It's one of those watches that I think if you were to pair this watch with a charcoal grey suede strap, for instance, it would really highlight that salmon finish to the dial, which I really enjoy. And I think it's a little bit muted on this sort of brownish strap, but it's a watch that I would really enjoy to wear, particularly with the sapphire case back, which is ever so slightly concave. It enables you to have a look at that wonderful architecture and the movement, and that's something that you are unable to do with any type of Cartier, frankly. Moving on now to a neo-vintage pick, and one of my favourite from this era of watchmaking. This is Vacheron. With its 47111 complication, chronograph complication in yellow gold. This really is one of those watches that you look at and think the simplicity and the symmetry just bring this watch together. It's, I think, the right size. It's 36 millimeters. It has these really ornate teardrop type lugs that make it a little bit quirky. It's not your modern patrimony, which is slightly more ordinary in design. This has something more to it. A stepped case, a lovely domed crystal, and that little pop of blue on the seconds hands and the subdials. I think it's interesting because this movement inside is synonymous with watches like a 5070 and a Breguet 3237 and all of those real icons of the neo-vintage era. And this is Vacheron's interpretation of it. I think the size is perfect, the attention to detail is perfect, and I just really enjoy it. The one last thing I'd like to say about this Vacheron 47111 is if you ever get the chance, give it a little listen when you wind it. The crunch of the wind is, I think, unparalleled. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous noise. I could do that all day, but I think I'd overwind. Brilliant, brilliant watch and well worthy of a mention this week. The last watch I'm going to talk about today is rather special. It's a little bit of a left field choice given that we've been talking about dress watches primarily, but this is a Rolex Submariner 1688, which is a yellow gold interpretation. What I love about it is the tropical dial. If you are in a lucky, privileged position where you're going to be jetting off somewhere sunny during the winter months, then this is the watch that I would want to take with me. It's got an almost sort of orangey, tango-y kind of dial to it, but it's still got that luster of gold. It's a really, really interesting finish, and heaven knows how it got that colour, but it complements the blue of the bezel perfectly. I would absolutely love to wear that. I think one of the interesting characteristics of this watch is how evenly it's patinated. Some of them are slightly uneven. This one is spot on. It's as if the dial was created this way in the first place, which of course it wasn't. And so it makes collecting this type of watch so much more interesting and hard to do because it's very organically adapted to the conditions that it's been kept in for all these years. And if you were out there having a martini or a gin and tonic of an evening while you're enjoying your winter sunny break, this is the watch that I would want to pair it with. So that's this week's drop. Over 50 watches hitting the site. Go and check them out. It's great to be back. Happy New Year to you all, and I'll see you next week.